So I have written down hilarious traffic getting out. So there was like a one or two lane road. Sometimes I think it was just a 1 lane road, but it was a very narrow road on the edge of a cliff. So like mountains over here and cliffside over here, and there were cars parked sort of half hanging off the road into the mountainside, and then there were also cars parked on the cliffside, and there were people turning around and doing U-turns and parallel parking, and it was just absolute chaos. It was very stressful, but there's no road rage, there was no like accidents, everything just sort of worked throughout the chaos. It was really cool to watch.
Much like Taiwanese chicken is incredible, Taiwanese drivers, I don't know how they do it. Like, just nerves of steel.
Yeah, I do have written down that in my notes that there was actually one car that was parked too far over the edge. So I remember that he was parked so close to the edge of the cliff, it wasn't falling down the cliff, but the wheels on the cliffside were actually not touching the ground anymore because the cliff fell away so steeply. So they were trying to get the car, like get back in their car to drive off, and they just didn't have any ground under the wheels to make the car go. That was the only little snafu we saw, but it was a pretty crazy experience. So eventually we made it to the top of whichever mountain, I don't know which mountain we were on in the park. That was really crowded and trafficy, and then we went up the mountains to there were a lot of longer hiking paths, but we kind of stuck to a few shorter hiking paths and like more like overlook areas, and we went to a few different overlook areas, and the park was just one of the most stunning places that I've ever been. with like bright yellow grass and green grass and mountains in the distance, and it was so beautiful.
Like everything was beautiful in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was Yangmingshan National Park, and I highly recommend it if you are ever in that area. It's so gorgeous. Then we drove back down the mountain, and it took about 2 hours. And we went into the city to go to
I think it's the National Palace Museum.
We went to the National Palace Museum. It had more than 700,000 pieces of Chinese history, so that was just an insane experience.
Apparently we got really lucky while we were there, and they had a piece on display that was called Dwelling on Fuchuan Mountain. And so the ancient Chinese art, like the really old stuff, consists of these long scrolls, like the length of a room. And so they are a combination of calligraphy and then also art. So there's like a scene painted on it as well. And so one of the things that was really funny, Ryan's dad is so knowledgeable about calligraphy, he knew that there were some pieces that were fakes.
Yeah, he was telling us all about, this one's authentic and this one's not real, and this is why, and showing us little aspects of the calligraphy that were different between the different pieces.
And he'd like point at one and then pull us across the room to another and be like, do you see how this stroke is different on this one than that?
Right. He could tell when it was done by someone who was really experienced, and he could tell by when the calligraphy strokes were done by someone who had less experience. So that was just really, really neat. The Dwelling on Fuchuan Mountain was apparently only on display for about 2 weeks, and we were lucky enough to be there. We went right after the Chinese New Year holiday had ended, so I don't know if it was on display because of that. It
might have been on display for that. I'm not completely sure on this, but I think that there might be, so I think that it's pretty accepted that the copy of that we saw is the real one.
They said it was.
But I think there might be another copy of it.
Some drama there.
Yeah. So.
So that particular painting, or that piece of art, was really gorgeous. And then I really enjoyed all of the jade that we saw, and they're just really intricate jade carvings, and then the explanation of like just how long it takes to carve jade and the process of how you do it and the different tools that are used. I thought that was just really cool.
We saw a lot of man hours of work in a very short span of time. Jade is very laborious to work on.
And the pieces that they had are just, some of them were huge, they're so intricate. So that was a pretty full day at this point, and we were starting to get hungry, and we were thinking about going to like a nice sushi restaurant, but at this point the jet lag was really catching up with me, and I think I actually fell asleep on the way to the restaurant, which was a little bit rude of me, but jet lag. I think Taiwan is either 12 or 13 hours late, so it's basically the exact opposite. So, it happens. So we picked up sushi for takeout, and we went back to the apartment, and we munched on it. I think we had some more tea, because the tea there was spectacular, and why not? And then we went back up to the mountain apartment to sleep.
Yep.
That was a cool day.
It was a long day.
It was a long day, but it was a very cool day. I loved that mountain.
Yep. I just have this memory of like the fields and like the kind of tall grasses as the wind swept over.